Off the coast of Algeria, on the morning of the 10th of March, 1956, 4 American bombers descended through a deck of solid cloud at 14,000 feet. 3 came out the bottom. The 4th did not. Her designation was B-47E Stratojet, serial number 52534. Her call sign was Inkspot Five-Nine. She was operated by the 369th Bomb Squadron, 306th Bombardment Wing, Strategic Air Command. On board were 3 United States Air Force officers: Captain Robert Hodgen, Aircraft Commander, age 31; Captain Gordon Inslee, Observer, age 32; Second Lieutenant Ronald Kurtz, co-pilot, age 22. In her bomb bay, locked in 2 sealed carrying cases, was cargo of a kind the United States Air Force had never lost before, and, officially, has never described in detail since. The capsules contained nuclear material, not an assembled weapon. A nuclear detonation, the Pentagon would later confirm, was impossible. But what was inside those 2 carrying cases was the core of what makes a nuclear weapon a weapon. 200 aircraft were thrown into the search. American, British, French, Moroccan. 5 days of flying over the Mediterranean and Western Desert. Ground troops walked the dunes. Naval vessels combed the coast. No wreckage, no bodies, no oil slick, nothing. The entire public account of what happened, Inkspot Five-Nine, released by the Department of Defense, runs to 6 lines. 2 sentences describe the disappearance. 1 sentence describes the search. 1 sentence confirms the cargo. 1 sentence states that no traces were ever found. 70 years later, that is still all there is. The file is closed, the whereabouts of the cargo unknown. To understand what was aboard Inkspot Five-Nine, you have to understand what the United States Air Force was doing in March of 1956. The Cold War was 11 years old. The Soviet Union had detonated its first atomic bomb in 1949, its first hydrogen bomb in 1943. The American posture, set by Strategic Air Command and its commander, General Curtis LeMay, was straightforward, continuous, visible, overwhelming deterrence. The doctrine required a bomber fleet that could reach Soviet targets within hours from anywhere on the globe. The B-47 Stratojet was the airframe that made that doctrine real. It was the first jet bomber in American service, faster than its predecessors, swept-wing, 6 engines, capable of crossing the Atlantic in under 6 hours with aerial refueling. SAC operated more than 1,000 of them by 1956. But the B-47 was a medium bomber. It could not fly from the continental United States to Moscow and back. To strike from forward positions, SAC needed forward bases. Ben Guerir Air Base in French Morocco, just north of Marrakesh, was one of them. Sidi Slimane was another. Together with bases in England, Spain, Greenland, and Guam, they formed a ring of fields from which American bombers could reach into the Soviet interior. Forward-deployed bombers needed forward-deployed weapons. But complete nuclear weapons were not stored at these overseas bases. Only the airframes were. The fissile cores, the plutonium or uranium pits that make a nuclear weapon explode, were kept separate, flown out from the United States as needed, sealed in carrying cases, locked into the bomb bays of aircraft like Inkspot Five-Nine, on missions that were never publicly described. The Air Force called it a ferry flight. By 1956, the program was running on a regular schedule. Bombers and capsules flew east, deployed for periods of weeks or months, then rotated home. 3 to 4 such flights crossed the Atlantic every month. Inkspot Five-Nine was one of them. And then it was not. Inkspot Five-Nine took off from MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida, in the early hours of the 10th of March, 1956. She was one of a flight of 4 B-47s, all bound for Ben Guerir. The other 3 carried no special cargo. Only she did. The route crossed the Atlantic at high altitude. About 5 hours out, the flight rendezvoused with a KC-97 Stratotanker that had flown from a temporary duty station in the Azores. Each bomber took on 35,000 pounds of fuel. The first refueling was uneventful. The 4 B-47s separated from the tanker and continued east. They crossed the western Mediterranean in formation. The Algerian coast was below and ahead. A second tanker, also from the Azores rotation, was holding at 14,000 feet, waiting for the bombers to descend for their second refueling. The 4 B-47s were above the cloud deck at altitude. The tanker was below the cloud deck in clear air. Between them, between the bombers and the tanker, was the cloud itself, a solid white layer. Top at 17,000 feet. Base at 14,500. The bombers descended into it. The descent should have taken about 3 minutes. 3 of the 4 B-47s broke out of the bottom of the cloud, found the tanker, and began their refueling pattern. Inkspot Five-Nine did not. There was no distress call, no emergency signal, no final transmission of any kind. Other radio stations along the route, listening on the same frequencies, heard nothing. The tanker waited. The 3 other bombers completed their refueling. And then somebody began calling Inkspot Five-Nine on the radio, and getting silence in return. The search began within hours. The United States Air Force scrambled aircraft from Sidi Slimane Air Base in French Morocco. The 56th Air Rescue Squadron took operational control. By midday on the 11th of March, more than 200 aircraft were in the air. American B-29s, British naval reconnaissance planes, French and Moroccan ground units, Spanish patrol boats. They searched the Mediterranean from the Algerian coast out to 100 miles offshore. They searched the desert south of Saidia and Port Said, where French press reports had suggested an explosion in the sky. They searched the mountains inland. They searched for 5 days. Nothing. No wreckage. No debris field on the water. No oil slick. No bodies neither in the sea nor on the land. No carrying cases, locked or otherwise. Not a single piece of an aircraft that just hours before had been flying in formation with 3 others. A B-47 weighs roughly 100,000 pounds. It has 6 engines, a 50-foot wing on each side, landing gear, fuel tanks, 3 men. When one of them crashes into the sea, it does not vanish. It leaves a debris field. Inkspot Five-Nine left nothing. At MacDill, the 306th Bombardment Wing prepared the standard notification telegrams. 3 were sent. The crew were officially declared dead shortly after the search was abandoned. The search lasted 5 days. More than 200 aircraft took part, and nothing came back, not from the ocean, not from the desert, not from the mountains. They were looking for something the size of a city bus, somewhere along 200 miles of coastline. They did not find it. The official Department of Defense statement on the loss of Inkspot Five-Nine runs to 6 lines. The aircraft was one of a flight of 4 scheduled for non-stop deployment from MacDill AFB to an overseas airbase. Takeoff from MacDill and first refueling were normal. The second refueling point was over the Mediterranean Sea. In preparation for this, the flight penetrated solid cloud formation to descend to the refueling level of 14,000 feet. Base of the clouds was 14,500 feet, and visibility was poor. The aircraft, carrying 2 nuclear capsules and carriages de Mekaikwait, are not at Dren Korkorkwait. That is the entire public record. The United States Air Force conducted its own accident investigation. That report on B-47E, serial 52534, exists. It sits in the Air Force Historical Research Agency archive at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. It has not been released. The specific isotope inside those 2 carrying cases, the type of nuclear material that went to the bottom of the Mediterranean or into the Algerian interior on the 10th of March 1956, has never been publicly identified. 70 years after the loss, the Atomic Energy Act still protects that detail. The precise coordinates of the disappearance are not in the public record. Captain Robert Hodgin, Captain Gordon Inslee, Second Lieutenant Ronald Kurtz. They were 31, 32, and 22 years old. We have their names. We have their ranks, their ages, and the squadron they served in. We do not have the rest. The pits are somewhere off the coast of Algeria, or somewhere on the land between Oran and the Moroccan border, or somewhere 200 aircraft and 5 days of searching failed to find. They have not decayed. Plutonium has a half-life of 24,000 years. Uranium 235 of 700 million. The file is closed, the whereabouts of the cargo